All right. Here comes the win streak. We could feel it, right? The vibes are a little bit better, and here comes the first win streak of the season. Sabres and Kraken. We'll preview it in the week ahead, coming up here on the Locked On Sabres podcast.
Your Locked On Sabres, your daily podcast on the Buffalo Sabres. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And thanks for making Locked On Sabres your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. Sneaky Joe DiBiase, and it's good to be back as the Sabres have won back-to-back games for just the second time this season. Still amazing that that's true. But maybe, just maybe, it is the beginning of the win streak they need to get back into a potential playoff race. They do need one eventually. I don't think there's a better time to do it than right now. Sabres have a 6-game homestand coming up. We'll talk plenty today about the first of which will be Tuesday night against the Seattle Kraken. 7 o'clock puck drop at KeyBank Center. We'll look at what the Kraken have been, and that's a team the Sabres have had a lot of struggles with. They've never beat the Seattle Kraken. So tonight would be a good night to start there as well. If you want to check us out on our text line, go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnSabres. If you are a sortie, apologies again for missing the weekend. I got a new phone and all the authenticator stuff that they have now, where you have the two-factor stuff, wasn't sending in my new phone, but we eventually got there. So we're back at it for tonight's game, and I'll be in attendance for tonight's game, so that'll be cool. You got the Seattle hot dog for tonight. You have the dog of the day. All right, so our review of what we're looking at for the dog of the day. Everything bagel cream cheese with peppers and onions. That is, I guess, what a Seattle dog is. I was thinking they do something with seafood because Kraken and they throw the fish over top or whatever at the market there. But they're going for everything bagel cream cheese, peppers and onions. I think that could be pretty good. I think it could be good. Don't knock it before you try it. I've been that way with a lot of these this year. Didn't want to touch the seafood chowder Boston dog that they had last week. Excuse me. But this dog, it could be pretty good. So if you're in the arena, let me know how it is. I probably will not be trying it, though, because I'm doing this food challenge thing. So anyways, Sabres are Kraken, 7 o'clock against Seattle. We'll get to that. Let's start, though, with where we left off, which was the Sabres winning in Pittsburgh on Saturday night. And they get back-to-back wins. Very, very different hockey games. Thursday night in Montreal very much was a domination of the Montreal Canadiens, not by the scoreboard until the end, where they pulled away late. But throughout almost the whole game, they were the better team than Montreal. Well, this game against Pittsburgh, it was a little bit more of the other, where they got a little lucky. They got some super strong goaltending. Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen with over 40 saves on the night. He was really strong. And you know what? To not let Devin Levi, who had a couple of nice starts late recently, start to run away maybe with being the legit number one on this team. Luukkonen answered the bell, came right back, and had a really strong game against a Pittsburgh team that I don't think is all that good. I think their goaltending is pretty poor. I think, they are a team that is pretty old, and I don't know how much they're going to last through the year, and they're already behind in the standings. The Sabres were able to beat them, but shot attempts in that game were 64 for Pittsburgh, 48 for Buffalo at 5-on-5. The expected goals in that game, 2.7 for Pittsburgh, 1.8 for Buffalo. So they did score above their weight, getting 3 goals on the night. Alex Tuch with a wrist shot from pretty way out, I would say, in the offensive zone. It's a nice shot by him, and nice to see him get his 10th of the year. But you want your goaltender to make that save. Rickard Rakell in the back door with a power play goal was Pittsburgh's only goal, and the Sabres kind of missed the coverage there on the PK. Zemgus Girgensons, the Sabres had a really nice shift there by Krebs, Girgensons, and Robinson. And they kept fighting. They kept getting chances. And Girgensons eventually just kind of cleans up a puck that was laying in front of the net with the backhand. That goes in to make it 2-1. And then Rasmus Dahlin, back-to-back games with empty net goals. He now is up to 12 on the season, as he's about to have his best season goal scoring wise by a lot. But in this game, they held tough. You got to win games like that, where it's not your best night. It's a talented team. We could at least say about Pittsburgh. They're on the road, and you found a way to close it out. You played defensively tough in the third period. Really, the story of that game, though, as much as they survived at the end, they survived at the beginning. Pittsburgh ran out with it at the start of that game. They had a bunch of chances in the first period. They really made Luukkonen work in the first. In fact, shot attempts in periods 2 and 3. 13 shot attempts by Pittsburgh in the second period. 17 shot attempts by the Penguins in the third period. 34 shot attempts by the Penguins in the first period. They were buzzing in the first 20, and Luukkonen really, really played strong. And the Sabres have a really nice goalie combo going right now. Maybe they can work themselves into a rhythm. They get more practice reps on Eric Comrie being there. But overall, a good result to get it done when it wasn't your best night. There were a bunch of penalties, too. The Sabres took 5 penalties on the night, and they only allowed 1 power play goal to go in on a power play that has Sidney Crosby and Erik Karlsson and Evgeny Malkin, and Jake Gensel, and they managed to only allow 1 shorthanded goal to go in on them. So way to get the game by the Sabres, and what it means for the standings is that a run here will get them back in the race. Even they have a 6-game homestand here, 5 of which are against teams that are not presently in playoff positions. In fact, I should double check that that's still true, as it was true going to the weekend. It is true because Seattle is actually technically not in a spot right now. They're tied for 1, but 5 of the next 6 against teams not in playoff spots. If they win 4 of the 6, that's 8 of 12. I bet they're going to be about 4 or 5 points out, which is kind of in the race. If they win 5 of the 6, or they go 6 of 6 and really put on a dominant streak here, like they'll probably need at some point, then we're talking about a real race. Then maybe they are 2, maybe they are 3. As going into this week, the Sabres at 38 points are 6 points back of the New Jersey Devils for a playoff spot. They are 8 points back of Philadelphia for the second spot. And all of those teams are grouped together. So at 44 points, you have New Jersey, Washington, Pittsburgh, and Detroit. Tampa down at 43. The Sabres are at 38. So a streak like that, maybe you jump over 2 of those teams. Maybe you jump over Detroit and Pittsburgh. Or maybe it's Washington and New Jersey. But knock off a couple of those 2, close the gap to the other 2. And to do that, you probably got to win 5. Or let's put it this way. You don't have to win 5. You have 12 possible points. Get 10. Get 10. I think the minimum in this stretch, with given the strength of opponent, and the Sabres are healthy now, should be 9. And I know that might sound like a really high bar. 9 out of 12 is the minimum. That's the situation they've placed themselves in. That's where the bar has to be set, because the margin for error now is so slim, and they're not going to get a more generous piece of schedule the rest of the way. Like, this is right here, these next 6 games, the most generous, the easiest the schedule gets the rest of the season. So lots of pressure, if you ask me, on the Sabres to perform and have their best stretch of hockey of the season coming up in the next week and a half. So that gets going with Seattle Tuesday night at KeyBank Center. What are the Kraken like this year, and what are the odds for this game? I got my parlay of the day all coming up here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. We are presented by Gametime. You shouldn't have to worry about when you buy your tickets to your next big event. Gametime has deals on tickets right up to the start of the event, even an hour after it starts. It's the best place to find last-minute tickets. Find exclusive flash deals and sponsor deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. With zone deals, you pick the section, Gametime picks the seats for big-time savings. And the Gametime guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Scroll through, look for your seats. You'll see the view of your seats, by the way, as you're scrolling through. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code Locked On for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Sneaky Joe DiBiase back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. Thanks for making us your first listen every day. The Seattle Kraken, our Tuesday night's opponent. The Sabres have never beaten the Seattle Kraken. They are 0-4 against them lifetime. That dates back to the 2021 season. The Sabres give up a lot of goals to this Seattle team in the past. And all of this is under Don Granato. So, it's this core that we're talking about. The Sabres in their 4 matchups against Seattle have given up 5 goals, 7 goals, 5 goals, and 4 goals. 21 goals in 4 games, just a tad over 5 goals per game allowed. And a couple of those games weren't even close. You had a 5-1 result, you had a 7-4 result, you had a 5-2 result. Their most recent game last January, it's been almost exactly a year, January 10th of last year, the Kraken were at Buffalo, and the Sabres lost a 4-3 game, close. And the Sabres actually outshot them in a big way, 35-22 in that game. So they've not beat this team yet. So now's the time, right? Now is the time to do it in a big spot for the Sabres. The Kraken, though, are really needing the points as well. If you're wondering about the strength of opponent in this upcoming stretch, I know I mentioned 5 of 6 against non-playoff teams. The Kraken are the team that are closest to that. The Kraken are 41 points, which is technically tied with Edmonton for the final playoff spot in the wild card in the West, but the Kraken have played 3 more games than Edmonton have. Edmonton on a 7-game win streak, by the way. So looking at their -9 goal differential, you're looking at a team that has not really had that high level talent. It's not the same to me as Vegas. When Vegas came out and was really good right away, it was, all these teams were stupid, letting them get this much talent right out of the gates. Seattle didn't have that level of talent. They had their success. They made the playoffs last year. They won a round against Colorado, but they don't have that same level of talent. Now, couple of things to look at when it comes to this Kraken roster. How do their advanced numbers look? Their advanced numbers show that they are better than their record. Expected goals for 51.6% at 5-on-5. That is 12th best in the National Hockey League. And they are a team that likes to pile up shot attempts as well. They are 10th best in the NHL in terms of shot attempts. The Sabres are actually 13th, so not too far behind. But this is a pretty good hockey team. It's not a great team because they do really lack the high-level talent. Looking at some of their numbers, I mean, a defenseman leads them in scoring. Vince Dunn, nice player. There were rumors about him in Buffalo a couple years ago, and I like that. I like Vince Dunn a lot. 27 years old. He's got 33 points in 39 games. But a defenseman leading the way in points for you is maybe a little bit telling of what your offensive level of production is. The 3 big guns behind that, 4 big guns, I should even say, it's really pretty close. It's Oliver Bjorkstrand, who's having his best season, 29 points. Eeli Tolvanen at 24 points. Jared McCann, 22. Matt Beniers, 18. A little bit of a sophomore slump for Beniers. And then Jordan Eberle, 18 points as well. Their top 6. So going into this game, the top line, Matty Beniers with Jordan Eberle and Tomas Tatar, a player that we kind of like for the Sabres in the offseason. He made his way to Seattle. He has not done a ton. But actually, no, to be fair, I wasn't looking at his games played. 5 points in 8 games. So he hasn't been playing a lot because he got there late. But that's Tatar on the first line. Second line, Alex Wenberg, Brandon Tanev, and Jaden Schwartz. I mentioned Oliver Bjorkstrand, who leads the way in points. He's on the third line with Yanni Gord and Eeli Tolvanen. I don't even feel right calling it that. That's the list I'm looking at right now. But it's really more of a 1-2. It's 1A, 1B, 1C type of situation, and you could tell that by looking at the ice time. So Beniers is listed as the number 1 center. He's at 18-15 of ice time a night. Yanni Gord, the third line center that I just referenced, that's 17-54. And Jaden Schwartz is at 17-16. So all 3 of their top lines are pretty evenly distributed in terms of ice time. The blue line, I mentioned Vince Dunn is the big guy back there, really strong, really nice puck mover. He's on the top pair with Adam Larson. Jamie Alexiak, big guy on the second pair, paired with another big guy, former Sabre prospect Will Borgen. And then the third pair, Brian Dumoulin with Justin Schultz. Not a bad blue line. Still, again, Dunn's a legit number 1. I shouldn't say that they don't have a legit number 1. They do. And then in goal, we don't know what they're going to do yet. Joey Decord and Chris Dreger, the 2 goaltenders. And I mean, kind of funny, Joey Decord taken over as the number one by a lot. They made two big investments out of the gates as a team. They went for Philip Grubauer and they went for Chris Driedger. And so far, it's Joey Decord out of nowhere with a 922 save percentage. He's played the most games, 21 starts, 17 for Grubauer. So I would expect Decord, but we don't really know yet because that hasn't been made official. What about the Sabres lines for this game? Roster for them and my parlay of the day coming up here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. We are presented by FanDuel Sportsbook. So the NFL regular season is done, but the playoffs are coming, and you've got the NHL season in full swing. You've got the NBA as well. It is the perfect time to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. The app is very easy to use. Many different ways to bet, like live same game parlays. Find bets in the new Explore tab. Make a parlay in the Parlay Hub, the best way to find popular parlays, and plenty more. So visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn. Make your first bet a layup. FanDuel, official partner of the National Football League. Final segment here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. Thanks for making us your first listen every day. We want to remind you that Locked On Sports Today is here for your 24/7 covering the top sports stories of the day. It's the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Check them out. Lots of expert analysis from the Locked On local experts, as well as our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube. Subscribe to the first ever national 24/7 streaming channel. All right, we'll get to my parlay in a moment. First, let's run down the Sabres lines for this game. And we will start with a lineup that really doesn't have a lot different than what you saw on Saturday. In fact, really only the goaltender is going to be different in this one. That is, by the way, expected. We don't know officially yet. We only know what they did on Saturday plus what we saw at the optional skate. So, Tage Thompson will be centering Alex Tuch and Jeff Skinner. Dylan Cousins in line to center JJ Peterka and Alex Quinn. No surprises in the top six. The one thing that we are waiting to see on, Jordan Greenway, who did not practice on Monday with an illness. He was back on the ice Tuesday. He will play Tuesday night against Seattle on his regular line with Casey Middlestat and Zach Benson. Line 4, as Okposo continues to miss time. Peyton Krebs centering Zemgus Girgensons and Eric Robinson. The blue line, we'll see if that actually stays the same at game time. But as of now, it appears that Rasmus Dahlin will stay with Henry Jokiharju. Owen Power will stay with Eric Johnson. And I made a mistake on the lineup sheet here if you're watching on YouTube. Matthias Samuelsson will be with Connor Clifton, not Ryan Johnson. Again, and barring a late change by Don Granato, which could happen. It could absolutely happen. All right. Goaltender, Devin Levi in goal. He started 2 of the last 3, getting it back in there. I don't think this is him being the number 1. I think really the order only looks that way because they wanted to get him in against Montreal, but I still think this is 1A and 1AA between Luukkonen and Devin Levi. But Levi in net for Tuesday night against Seattle. How about the betting lines for this game? Interesting. The first time all year that I can recall that the Sabres have been a pick'em right on the line. -110 on the money line. The Kraken -110 on the money line, despite the fact that Buffalo is at home. The over-under in this game, 6.5, +100 for the over, -122 for the under. Let's look at my favorite 3 bets, the same game parlay of the day. Will always be, if the trend is right. If you don't want to do the parlay, take the extra risk. I've definitely been hitting on the anytime goal scorer all year. I've just been a little bit rusty on the other 2. So, anytime goal scorer for this game, I'm going to go with Tage Thompson. +170. I asked Don Granato on Tuesday morning at WGR about Tage and how he set the bar last year as one of the best players in the NHL. And this year, not so much. He's been okay, but okay is not the Tage Thompson standard that he set. But starting to get a little bit better. Granato did say he's been overcomplicating things a little bit. So I don't love that, but he is getting some chances. We're seeing, I think he's a little bit healthier. I'm going to do a deep dive on Tage and his season so far on one of our next shows. But for tonight, I do like him to score at +170. Let's go for a player to record 3 or more shots on goal. And I am going to go with Jack Quinn at plus 195 to record 3 or more shots on goal. I've loved Quinn so far. I think he has a lot of confidence in his shot right now as he's scoring goals out there. He knows he's a sharpshooter. I think Peterka has kind of slid a little bit more into that playmaker role. Not entirely. He's still shooting a lot too. But I do think there's more evenly distributed shots on that line without Zach Benson and Quinn inserted onto it. And then finally, I'm going to go with the Sabres to not only win their first game ever against the Seattle Kraken. I'm going to go the Sabres to cover a -1.5 goal puck line. I say the Sabres win by 2 or more. So it could be the empty netter at the end. Dahlin, the king of the empty net goal. I do like the Sabres in this one. They've had a couple of days rest. They've built some momentum in the last 2 games. They know what they know what this means. They know the pressure that's on them to have a stretch here. I think they come out firing. I think the message from Don Granato has been, guys, you're not in the playoff race right now. This stretch is how you get back into it. And it's time to go on a win streak. And I think that they come out firing out of the gates in this homestand. And they do it against the Seattle Kraken, who, long trip out east. Not always the easiest for teams to do. That 3-leg parlay, Tage Thompson, anytime goal, Jack Quinn, player to record 3+ shots on goal, and Sabres -1.5 puck line, plus 1,600 exactly. So 10 to win 160 or 100 to win 1,600 is what I'm looking at for tonight's parlay of the day. All right, enjoy Sabres and Kraken. Enjoy the hot dog of the day, the Watchtower after Jimi Hendrix, they called it. Give me a rating, 1 through 10, if you get a chance to get a hold of that dog, and let me know what it is. As we're eventually going to put a ranking together of our best hot dogs of the year. So stay tuned for that on our next show. Not that ranking. Well, that's going to be later in the year, but a review of that maybe. If you want to jump on and let me know what you think of the game as it's going on, or if you have a question or a comment, or you want to tell me how good the hot dog is, go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnSabres, and you can get in on our Locked On Sabres text line. Thanks everybody for listening to the Locked On Sabres podcast, making us your first listen every day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.